So, hey, man, thank you for taking a minute out. It's great to catch up with you.
My pleasure. Thank you
I,
for your interest in the record.
oh man, I absolutely love this album. I jumped on
Oh,
it and played it, and I've already had it on the show. I love it. Absolutely love it.
and where are you located?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Right. Okay. You
Yeah.
know Chuck McKinnon?
Chuck McKinnon, man, that name's
Like,
familiar.
he's a trumpet player. He's on the scene there.
Yeah, the
He,
name is so familiar.
yeah, he's a jazzy jazz guy.
Okay. Okay. Yeah,
Um,
I'll have to go through my Rolodex here.
yeah, I've known him since California days, and then he moved to New York too. And then he's just been chasing college gigs,
Okay.
trying to
Okay.
teach. He got his PhD, and it's a little harder than he thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to get that doctor label, it's going to take some effort. That's
Oh
for
no, he
sure.
got it. He got it.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
just
that's what
thought it was
yeah.
gonna be he thought it was just gonna be easier to get teaching gigs.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's almost kind of no there. Who wants to learn to play jazz? Then what?
Yeah.
Then what do you do? I
Yeah.
you know, I can't tell you, man. It's
Yeah.
that's you say to the cat, you know, my advice is if you have something better to do, you should do it.
Yeah.
But if you don't, this will be okay.
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, you kind of mentioned up front about the pandemic, this first interview. How did you survive that time now that we're kind of coming out that 3 years? And how has it changed the way that you do things now?
Well, this record was recorded just before the pandemic, and uh, I spent the pandemic editing my autobiography. It's called 50,000 Bong Hits. You can get it on Amazon. Um, and so I was fairly productive during the pandemic. Financially, I had nothing. I was the house pianist at Del Posto. It's the Mario Batali restaurant for like 8 years. That was kind of like my day job. Four nights a week I could play there. And but that crashed and never came back after the pandemic. He kind of crashed, and that was the end of that place. But it was a good run, and that's what I was doing at the time. So it went from being really busy to nothing at all. Um, we spent the first couple of months on the Eastern Shore of Virginia, where my wife's father's wife had a place that they weren't in. So they were watching television, and it was like apocalyptic in New York. They're down in Florida, and they're like, "Get out of there before it's too late." We're like, "Really? Country house? Yeah." So we
Yeah.
packed up the car and we went down there, and just it wasn't even there yet. So it was kind of weird.
Yeah.
When we came back, things had kind of settled down here, and people had kind of figure out what was going on. And then shortly after that, my wife got a job with Disney as an on-set safety manager, which was kind of a new job, and kind of raised in importance now. If you're going to shoot, maybe you saw Tom Cruise's famous tirade yelling at his crew during the pandemic.
Yeah.
If we don't follow the protocol, they are going to shut us down, and we won't be able to shoot, and nobody can make any money. That means and your buddy, and so put your fucking mask on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was kind of her. She was working on a set, Godfather of Harlem, and they were building it out and then shooting and all. She had to be in charge of all of that. Everyone getting tested 3 times a week, and the changing protocols, being in touch with that. So right away, I mean, that was not only a right away job, it was a really good job. It was a really good Disney job. All of a sudden, healthcare. We'd been scrambling because she was freelance story editor before that, and I just play gigs and do music. So that we're very lucky that got us through. We got the alpha variety. Our daughter is an asymptomatic character carrier. Um, so she had it too, but didn't get sick. And then that was the only time that we had it, or and fast forward, she's still employed with Disney, doing the same thing. Only now she runs like maybe 8 or 10 shows, as the protocols soften and soften and soften. Now they're kind of. I mean, they're not going to mask protocols probably won't return for those Disney shows, but but she still needs to manage positive tests when they happen, and quarantine, and there's still protocols for all that. So she still has the job, so that's good for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the Pacific Jazz Group. It's such a great album. How did this come about?
I'm a huge fan of all things Pacific jazz and world Pacific. When I lived in California, I discovered this label sampler in a record store, and I had this little Chinese girl, maybe she's Japanese. I think she was Japanese. Eating an ice cream cone with a little bowl haircut, super cute, and it said Pacific Jazz in different colored letters, $1.99, and it was an album sampler that was narrated by this guy. So here's Jerry Mulligan and Chet Baker playing this music that didn't have any, harmonic reinforcement. A lot of that sound was no chords, no guitar, no piano. So I thought that was really modern sounding for the 50s. And yet they play very, very inside. Um, so I was just drawn to that music and that sound, and just started to explore the label more and more and more. And the imprint is really cool. Almost all of the record covers are really cool. Feature a big piece of art, and then the name of the band is small, you know. So anyway, this guy comes along and he's talking about the sound of jazz, the sound of men communicating with each other and with you. So it goes through the whole album. This guy keeps popping up, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? So that's what started it all. And now I probably have, I don't know, 50 or so, 60 Pacific jazz records, maybe more. That's Bud Shank, that's Chico Hamilton, Russ Freeman, Joe Pass recorded for them, some things for them, Jim Hall. Who else? Michel Legrand did some things for them. Victor, what's his name? He played with Miles. Victor, forget his name.
Victor
Anyway,
Lewis?
yeah,
Yeah.
piano player.
Yes.
Yeah, Victor Feldman.
Oh,
That's
Feldman. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
He wrote Seven Steps to Heaven. He was on that label too. There's an interesting record where it's called Victor Feldman Plays Everything in Sight, and he's on outside on some soundstage, and there's just fucking shit everywhere, gongs, and he plays all the instruments on the record, and that kind of inspired me to do my last record, which was all originals, where I played all the instruments. Dred Scott Rides Alone.
Yeah.
So the Pacific Jazz thing was, I have a patron and a friend, architect developer in Berkeley, who we've been friends for a long time, and he's helped me get a lot of projects made, uh, and he had built a studio in his. Rides Alone was in one of his studios, but then he moved that studio into a bigger house and wanted to try it out. And I didn't have any projects. I didn't have any, to me, making a record is, you write the music, you learn it, you play it, and then you record it. And that's the how you make records. That's what I thought. And that's what I always did. But I didn't have any songs, and there was no time to write any songs. And so what do you do? And the Pacific jazz thing popped into my head. I'd always played those songs on gigs. It was always something different and unusual to play. That cats, it's a common language, but a lot of people don't play those songs. Maybe like Bernie's tune, everybody knows, or Line for Lions. There's another one, but after that, cats are not going to be going like, oh, I know that song, even though they're all, they're not involved. They're not difficult. They're all basic 32 bar tunes or close to it, but happy sound of their music was also what attracted me to it. It just made me feel good to put it on, pep in your step. It wasn't like, like after this Coltrane solo, the world will end, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong. I love the fucking, I love everything, but this is weird. This is as specific a way of playing as, say, playing free jazz or playing modal or playing post bop. This is kind of more of a reserved mindset. Not that we stick to that directly. We're still living in 2023, you know, I'm not consciously trying to modernize this music, but people are saying that it is modernized just because we are modern people playing it. But it wasn't a conscious thing to like, oh, I'm gonna do it's just started with, let's just play some regular jazz, which I never do.
Yeah.
I have to play some people call my shit compla jazz or compla, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
science jazz, or some of my earlier stuff is involved metrically and weird chords and shit. Some of it isn't, but it's always been what I wanted to do, you know.
Yeah.
This is something I wasn't sure, you know, I wasn't sure about. So I had some cats that I've known in the Bay Area for years, and I got them, John Witala and Smith Dobson. The drummer comes from a long line of, his dad was a great piano player, played with Bobby Hutcherson in the Bay Area, played with everybody, Cal Jader. He was kind of a big force in the Bay Area, although I never met him. He died before I met him. But his son and his daughter, Sasha Dobson, lives in New York and is a
Yeah.
great singer.
Yeah.
So that's that family. That Smith is her brother, and I used to play with him in the Bay Area, so that's why I got him. And Eric Crystal is Boz Scaggs, been on the road with Boz Scaggs these days, but we used to play a lot of jazz together in San Francisco days when I lived there. So that's why I picked him. He's a really intuitive sort of player.
So how did this journey begin for you? How did you get into the jazz?
Well, the first music I ever heard was Dave Brubeck, and I have an older brother who was a piano player. He played music, and he at the time was playing the latest Dave Brubeck stuff when I was really little. So I was around it. I learned how to improvise on take five. You know, it's just the black notes and C and F all the way up if you know the piano at all. And just do that. And that was kind of one of my kid tricks. Then I discovered the bass guitar when I was around 12 or 13 and just dove deep into rock and was into, Zeppelin and AC/DC, Bon Scott AC/DC, let me be clear.
Yeah.
Um, although the other guy, I mean, Back in Black is a good record, but he just didn't have the tude, the rock and roll tude that you need in your lead singer.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course he has to die. That if he is that guy, you're not going to be here long. Sorry, Jim Morrison.
Yeah. Right.
But then that led to just more. My brother's turning me on to Chick and Herbie's coming out with. When I heard Thrust, I was like, what the fuck is this shit? And that got me into that whole avenue of going back into the funk and P-funk and James Brown and going back that way. But that started with Herbie and I went backwards. Same with Chick. I mean, Chick was an early piano influence, and his music was challenging, and that's what I think drew me to jazz.
Yeah.
It was the next element of challenge. I'd played classical music as a kid, and I didn't really feel like that. Hey Lucy, excuse me a second. Hey, Lucy, can you get my laundry, please? Thanks, babe. Sorry, I lost my train.
Chick, you were talking about Chick.
Right. That's where I got the idea that this is how you make jazz like a rock band.
Yeah.
And then when I heard the Miles group with Wayne, going back and hearing that Miles group with Wayne and Tony and Ron and Herbie, that shit. I mean, that was borderline rock and roll. They were hitting so hard, and the shit was so loose and far out that that really what drew me to jazz, because I had no idea what they were doing. What are these? What is this? And I kind of had to know, but that was really, that group is what really drew me in to more, serious jazz, and then back to Hank Jones and back to Bud Powell and Bird and all, and and Teddy Wilson and Cecil Taylor. And then I started to just be, then it was just a journey of just, you know, discovery, which I'm still on.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So why do
You
you,
know,
what is it that you love the best about being a musician? What's the best part of this process for you?
oh, I don't really, it, I mean, it started as I just didn't want to have a job. I would go to work in the same place, and I saw my dad put his fedora on, go out the door to the job, and he didn't say, I didn't know how much he hated it until he retired, and it was later in life, you know. And then we talked a little more candidly, you know, and I was just convinced I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't going to do something I didn't want to do. And you're supposed to do what you want to do when you're a musician. You have to find who you are and put it into the music, and you're supposed to be searching inward and indulging yourself and knowing what you know, indulging your artistic whims. I mean, beyond you know, beyond the obvious technique of learning how to how to play, how to paint, how to draw, whatever the fuck, you know, whatever it is. But beyond that, you know, it really is a free lifestyle. You know, it's hand to mouth mostly, unless you've got, you know, I shacked up with my latest wife, my second wife, not my latest, not that I'm going to have another one. Um, um, 13 years ago, and I didn't have any kids, and neither did she in her marriages. So when we kind of started over and had a kid 13 years, 12 years ago when we met, and that's been a whole other sort of journey that's kind of, you know, changed from when, you know, doing what I want to doing what I need to do, you know, like I guess you might call it growing up, or
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it that, but
Right.
other than that, you know, I mean, she's a great, you know, she's a great, makes a lot of money, and she wants to work, and she likes to work, and her work is usually creative. This COVID safety side gig just kind of came out of nowhere, but she worked for Chopped as a story producer for years. It might surprise you to hear this, but it's, you know, it's manipulated highly.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, being the man behind this music, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Run the show. Well, you know, I pick the tracks that are good, and I decide if they're not good. So I guess, you know, I pick the art, and pick the guys who can design it, and who do I think I am? I mean, that could be in a sort of transitionary phase. I used to be quite obviously a rebellious and contrary and controversial and um, sarcastic and occasionally combative, um, opinionated certainly, and uh, like the label. What does the label call me? The maestro of mayhem. I mean, this record is hardly the maestro of mayhem. You know,
Right.
it's the maestro of organization. Practically, I mean, this is like jazz. You know, in the way it goes. You know, but uh, so, you know, that's kind of hard to say because I'm kind of, and I'm, you know, through my reverse midlife crisis, which was, you know, get a job and be secure and go to a cubicle and have health. I got over that. No, I'm definitely going to be a musician. I'm going to be 60 next year, so that's it. I can't do anything else. Um, um, but I definitely, um, I didn't know what I was going to do with the music. I didn't understand why I would write any more jazz music after 12 records, you know, of doing it. There it is. What else do I don't really didn't feel like I had much else to say about it. Uh, uh, Especially considering the market's ahead of a pin, you know, the people who like it, people who appreciate it, it's really a small amount of people. Um, so, you know, I just kept playing because I love to play and to perform, and then I live in New York, there's lots of opportunity to play music. So I just was doing that when this kind of came along, and I already have another record in the can. It's called Cali Mambo. And this is Cal Jader and George Shearing, sort of Latin. If you know those records, there are about 5 or 6 of them in the mid-50s. So now I'm kind of developing this series of sort of, I've never put any cover material on any records, and now I've got 2, and there's nothing but covers. I had to write a ballad. We needed a ballad for Cali Mambo, so I wrote something for that one. But the next record, I have this producer, Denny Abrams, and he's into this kind of retro. The marketing people are like, people want what they know right now coming out of the pandemic. So, well, that's the Pacific Jazz, and the Cali Mambo is very familiar, although it's not, it'll sound different. The vibes with the piano, there's nothing out there like that at the moment that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And it's, we play on it, more than they did. Their versions are very slick, and it's nice. It's great. You should check them out. When I think of other creative trajectories, there was a time Herbie quit writing music, and there was a time Keith quit writing music, and that was one of the most successful parts of his career when he formed the Standards Trio. Everyone went bonkers over it. I mean, that shit was fucking incredible. It had nothing to do with Keith being Keith. Like, it was a departure. And same with I read an interview. Herbie was like, I don't know why I don't write music anymore. I don't know. And that's kind of like, wow, does that just happen to some people? I guess it does, because that's how I felt. But having these other concepts to embrace is kind of reinvigorating. Maybe some people will be surprised that that's what I'm doing.
So if anyone wants to pick up, sorry, you lag. I'm sorry, my internet's just really, I don't know what's going on in Kansas City today, but it's not happy. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to make sure that we got in before we got out, where they can pick up the Pacific Jazz Group, your new work, anything related to your world. Where can they go?
Well, the Pacific Jazz record is on all of the streaming platforms, I think, and Bandcamp, and through the label Ropeadope. I think they have it everywhere, pretty much. 50,000 Bong Hits, the book you can only get on Amazon. Print to order.
Right on.
And then all the other records are at the Ropeadope, or at my Bandzoogle site, whatever, Dred Scott, Bandcamp, or whatever. Or you can go to my website, dredscott.com, see what I'm up to.
Right on. Dred, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time and your story, man. I appreciate it.
Nice to meet you.